The town of Adam's childhood stood on the tall grass and hushed valleys of a lonesome area most called nowhere. The middle of it, to be exact, not that memories ever are. Within the borders of this sleepy town where white picket fences loomed like sentry lines against perpetually unlocked doors, a young boy was given a quest. Pursue happiness, no matter how hard life fights to keep it from you, Old Man Rainey had said. A peculiar name, considering the fact that Mr. Rainey had been the youngest father Adam knew. The man had a warm way of speaking that felt full of promise, a voice of truth emanating through this golden memory of youth far gone. Most recollections had a similar tendency to shimmer when contemplated, through the gauze of time past. However, Adam could still remember the Rainey family's pride in their big house with the perfectly manicured lawn. They always had smiles on their faces. Even now, Adam remembered how lucky he had felt to be standing alone with his hero. Mr. Rainey had placed a palm over Adam's bony shoulder and squeezed firmly, as they smiled upon the small gathering that was happening all around them that afternoon. It was a seasonal expression of neighborhood camaraderie, tinged with the scent of grilled meat on the breeze, as well as that of freshly planted flowers. It's simple to reach that place, if you know how, Old Man Rainey had remarked, so long as you have someone to show you the way. I wish someone had taught me the way of things, when I was younger. Adam was no longer a child, but even in his youth, he was grown enough to recognize the weight of free advice when one stumbled upon it. Golden words from a golden man. As happy as Adam's boyhood neighbors had always been, Adam couldn't for the life of him recall a time during which his own parents seemed content. Therefore, upon being given a map toward this so-called happiness, Old Man Rainey spoke so highly of, Adam was eager to follow in his footsteps. At the ripe age of 20, Adam adorned a suit tailored to fit his young body and took an elevator up to the 23rd floor of a very tall building. He remained within its belly, until the sun began to sink bloody and orange, into a horizon he would never see, his body and mind thoroughly occupied until it wasn't, and the elevator lowered him down to the land of man again. The tired young man stumbled out from the dark maw of the building with its pinnacle scraping the sky, evening after evening, along with a wide assortment of people with lowered heads just like his, head pounding as any mind would, ricocheting against empty walls in a chamber full of pressure. Adam returned to his parents' home for many a month. He curled up within the warm sheets of his childhood bedroom, walls covered with mementos of dreams long since cast aside, baseball legends, cartoon explorers, photos of friends who had long since moved away or settled down. A home of your own, Old Man Rainey had told him. A good job will leave you with enough to buy a home of your own, doesn't matter what you're doing, so long as you can move up. A young man needs that, don't you think? Something of his own, to be your own person. It took Adam 2 years of absent-minded busy work for him to reach the next point on his quest. Draped in the suit once tailored to fit his ever-shrinking form, Adam stood with a great sense of achievement before this home of his own. Crossing a fence line, much like that of his golden years, the young man held his bronze key out before the lock and waited. He heard the soft jingle of his keys upon the door like the wind chimes his mother used to hang beyond their kitchen window. He even heard the call of mourning doves, much like those that would wake him in the blue hour before school. He left for work in his very tall building, wearing his suit and carrying his keys, only to return home every evening to this gaping sense of expectation. Adam's faith wavered beneath this pang, not unlike hunger, which grew hard within his core. It was a hunger for some sense of fulfillment, some sort of recognition of the validity of the path he had been following all these years. As he lay down upon his bed and allowed his sore muscles and throbbing head to ripple over his body like waves, Adam was struck by the reality of his lonely home full of furniture that only he had ever used. He forced his neck deeper and deeper into his pillow, so as to cancel out the arched shape it had begun to adopt over the course of his career. His bones felt as though they were curling inward, molding to the stooped position he took over his desk every day. Adam couldn't quite remember the last time he had a dream. He felt that something must be missing. Adam had acquired the job, a house. In fact, Adam was the youngest person in the company to rise up in the ranks as quickly as he had. Yet, he couldn't feel proud. In fact, Adam hadn't been feeling much of anything at all recently, except weary, now that he thought of it. It was then that the brilliant smile of his neighbor, Old Man Rainey, glinted through the young man's mind, as the sun would catch on passing cars sometimes. Blinding. Mr. and Mrs. Rainey were always smiling at one another in Adam's memories. He pondered the thought with great fondness as another image of a woman he had met in his very tall building came back to him as well. The following afternoon, Adam paid careful attention to the woman he'd remembered the evening before. She had a healthy glow about her, and as she greeted Adam from her receptionist's post, amidst the sea of slow-moving bodies, Mr. Rainey's voice echoed through the sands of time. People get lonely, of course. And assets. They're meant to be shared. Marry someone who makes you smile, kid. Of course. Adam thought to himself. How could he have forgotten? Adam grinned. Anna had a sweet way about her. Their shared smile was only an additional reciprocated quality, in addition to their respective pursuits of something along the lines of happiness. Each of them harbored preconceived notions of what it was that they were striving toward. It was the image of some ideal upon the horizon, a sight unseen, wobbling like heat waves above the pavement during warmer months. The closer they leaned in to see exactly what it was that they were trying to embody, the more obscure the image seemed to become. Yet this path, Adam's quest, remained. Not everyone was so fortunate as to be granted a literal map toward success as he had been. And as far as Anna was concerned, who was she to deny the value in the words of her partner's cherished Old Man Rainey? The eager couple embarked on trembling feet, unsure of how they were meant to feel, yet absolutely certain of what they were expected to do. They waltzed through the usual charade of dates, strolling through parks, going out to dinner, and eventually attending weddings as one another's guests, until finally, they decided to have a union of their own. Adam and Anna were married within the year. It was a nice change of pace to return home to a house that wasn't barren, and Adam enjoyed the comfortable silences that he and his new wife were capable of sharing with one another. Anna, on the contrary, was having a rather difficult time. She spent her days alone in the empty home, after having agreed to the decision that she leave the workforce. Adam believed that it made perfect sense for him to be the breadwinner. His new promotion offered him the overtime. He needed to stay on top of the bills, and anyway, Mrs. Rainey never went to work as far as he could recall. Anna was growing lonely. There wasn't enough time in the day for her to really spend with her husband, and in their sleepy little town full of blossoming families, there weren't many opportunities for lone women such as herself to make friends and occupy her free time. Beneath the shroud of moonlight, as most conclusions tended to find him, Adam once again felt that invisible pressure of some expectation, unmet. Somehow, even with his wife lying beside him in their big home, and his new promotion at work, Adam felt as though he was falling behind. He must have been. Hence, why he felt as though something integral was missing. A piece whose form he couldn't quite see, but whose absence demanded to be felt. Adam awoke the following morning, and adorned his suit with a series of small movements that his arms sometimes made, even whilst in the throes of sleep. He drank his steaming cup of coffee across the table from a wide-eyed Anna, as his heart pounded in his chest. Adam felt like a pretender, but who was he performing for? What was it that scared him so? Here he had a wife, the house, his job. The checklist repeated itself time and time again in his tired head, until a soft voice called out to him through the noise. Adam. Anna smiled when he met her gaze. He looked surprised to see her there. Have you ever thought about, starting a family? Adam sighed deeply, running his hands through thinning hair. Anna swallowed hard, unsure of how she was meant to interpret this response. Her husband's eyes glinted gold in the rays of sunlight pouring through their kitchen window. The mourning doves of his youth perched atop trees Adam's knees would no longer dream of scaling. Of course, he murmured with a distant smile. How could he have forgotten? With the subsequent birth of their children, Adam finally began to feel confident of the fact that he was on the right path. Or perhaps he rarely experienced that sense of uncertainty gnawing away at his insides anymore, because he simply had no time to spend worrying about matters other than those directly in front of him. Adam found himself in a constant struggle to outrun the hands of the clock, which governed his life. He spent his days working tirelessly at a job he was convinced slowly pounded his brains into mush, only to return home for dinner, as his little ones were already crawling into bed. Looking into the eyes of his growing children, Adam felt as though he had finally reached the sense of purpose old man Rainey taught him to strive toward. Yet to his great dismay, there was never any time to spend with them. He always found it within himself to save a smile for his family, during those golden moments they managed to spend with one another. But as the poets have eternally warned, nothing golden lasts forever. The love Adam had for his family was great. In fact, it was this same devotion that pushed him to miss all of the baseball games on the weekends, their birthday parties full of squealing friends, anniversaries with Anna, and even graduations as the years dragged on into decades. He told himself that this toil, his grueling work, was all for the better of his family. It was a truth he needed in order to sleep at night, knowing deep down that he had missed it all. Yes, Adam thought, I needed the hours to pay the bills to keep the house to support my family. Once the kids grew up, however, leaving Adam and Anna together in an aging home of their own once again, Adam saw. He saw that he had missed his children altogether, that chapter having long since closed. Perhaps this was the destination all along, a period of rest to enjoy the life he created. In his retirement, however, Adam struggled to find the peace he believed awaited him at the end of his long journey. Once the shimmering gauze of memory lifted, and Adam recounted his life as it loomed before him unveiled, that sensation of hunger which once lived within his core, burned into a bitter seed of regret. Here he sat alongside his wife as an old man. Adam had worked tirelessly at a job he despised, in order to afford a home he was told he needed, in order to house the children he fathered, yet never got the chance to know. His wife was kind, and she accepted his small kindnesses when they came her way, but Adam still didn't feel as though he knew her. Adam was still unsure that he knew what love was, or if he'd even recognize happiness if he were to meet it at some point down the road. Unless this was it all along. Perhaps the path Adam made was meant to forge a way for those to come. That must be it, he thought to himself. Adam exhaled a breath of relief which wavered in the breeze along with the scent of grilled meat and freshly planted flowers. He laid one heavy palm atop the bony shoulder of his grandson as the sunlight warmed their squinting faces. "Pursue happiness, kid," he said, "no matter how hard life fights to keep it from you." With sweeping gestures toward his home and his children, Adam told the young boy the story of his life. He told the boy a tale of perseverance and faith in the pursuit of success, a tale of sacrifice for the ones he loved. Humans have a funny way of believing in their own words, so long as someone is listening. It's within the embrace of solitude that one's convictions often evolve into a truth much harder to swallow. Adam lost his sweet Anna once they lost their home. It was a shock too great for her heart to wrap itself around, and so it simply ceased to beat on as Adam watched. Nobody could deny that Adam worked hard for all that he had earned over the course of his life, but the tides of economic inflation weren't known to spare souls. Even those who devoted their lives to its very ebb and pull. Rather than a rickety desk in his old age, Adam's spine found itself curled over a metal walker instead within the walls of his modest end-of-the-line home. He didn't find there to be anything very nursing about its sterile walls, and the penetrating scent of rubbing alcohol, that never ceased to linger within his burning nostrils. Aside from his attendant, Nurse Eleanor, that is. She was an older woman with a warm smile, who had worked in this industry of maintaining the elderly for some years now. Adam would share a cup of coffee with her on her slower mornings, and listen as she recounted guests she knew from the past. In his solitude, Adam had taken to pondering the life that loomed behind him, considering how there couldn't be very much left to go now. It was nice to have someone to talk to, since his kids weren't around. They had fulfilled what they felt their duty was in committing their ever-absent dad to a home when he needed one, but their obligations to the familiar stranger ceased at that. His children had followed in his footsteps, each of them clawing their way up the corporate ladder in very tall buildings of their own, buying homes and starting families, without a second thought, as he had. Yet this didn't bring Adam the sense of pride or comfort he hoped it would, in his old age. It wasn't the legacy he imagined he would leave behind, another brood of busybodies plowing through the sands of time. He had never made the time to find people he'd call friends, either, over the course of his grueling career. But maybe that just wasn't my path. Adam explained to Nurse Eleanor rather than lamenting, I had an old neighbor once that used to tell me that so long as I worked and housed my family, that's what life is all about. It's what makes a person feel happy, like a person of their own. Old Man Rainey, we used to call him. Adam laughed to himself as the steam from his mug fogged up his smudged glasses. Old Man Rainey. Nurse Eleanor echoed, you want to know something funny? I used to have an old Mr. Rainey in here years ago. Poor thing was on all sorts of medications his whole life, it seemed. Antidepressants, painkillers, things to help him sleep. A fierce gust of wind pounded against the thick glass of the window behind Adam, startling him into placing his coffee gently down onto the table beside him. I suppose it's just hard for some people to be alive, huh? Nurse Eleanor murmured, primarily to herself. It's not a common name, is it? Rainey? Adam could feel his heart fluttering within the flesh and bones cage of his chest. Nurse Eleanor shook her head, eyes 100 miles away as she rocked back and forth with her own steaming cup of coffee. You know what? She exclaimed, suddenly rising up out of her seat. I think I might have a photo of Mr. Rainey. We keep an album of all our guests. Her voice trailed off as she left Adam in a hurry. The window within the no longer young man's assigned space looked out onto a parking lot. There was a skinny tree at the far end of it, but none of the mourning doves Adam loved ever perched upon its slender branches. He didn't reckon that he would choose a place such as this to rest either, if he had had the choice. His hands trembled as he rested his fingertips on the dusty windowsill. He couldn't remember standing up. His mind seemed all adrift, yet awfully clear at the same time. It couldn't be, he thought to himself. Old Man Rainey was a happy man. When Nurse Eleanor re-entered the space, the sound of her many bracelets clanking together reminded him of his mother's kitchen window. As the massive album spread its multicolored wings like faces beneath his nose, Adam could have sworn he heard wind chimes. Well, Nurse Eleanor pressed with a smile, is it him? You know, he used to stay in this room, now that I think of it. Isn't that funny? She shook her head beside Adam, marveling at the synchronicities they lay enshrouded within. The old man exhaled sharply, his already blurry eyes filling with blinding tears. Adam nodded, covering his mouth with a wrinkled hand like soft leather. He felt her firm hand upon his shoulder, as everything he thought he knew came crashing down over his stooped head, like a landslide. The photo of Old Man Rainey's face, beneath Adam's devastated gaze, had finally grown into his nickname. Adam groaned when he thought of his family. His family, and the little pills Old Man Rainey would swallow along with his eggs and coffee every morning to keep him feeling okay enough to want to go on living his own seemingly golden life. He imagined Mrs. Rainey powdering over the sleepless circles that must have loomed beneath her sunken eyes every morning, they too saving their brightest smiles for golden days and hopeful faces. The Raineys, not at all unlike Adam, were also in blind pursuit of an ideal. They were lost. Even his heroes had been chasing a dream that only ever existed within the confines of their minds deluded with hope or maybe just grief at not knowing how they ought to live, the one life they were given. Here, Adam stood as an end of generations past, all striving toward an illusion of something better. As for his own children, Adam felt with grief that ravaged him. They were only the beginning of the next generations in pursuit of happiness, success, peace. All words made up by beings like themselves. Words like wind attempting to anchor us down to something real. Something real and good and worthwhile. Adam sighed at the absurdity of it all, as the lonely tree in the window bent beneath the force of the winds howling all around it. He reckoned that he and Old Man Rainey were similar in that way. Maybe inventing paths toward destinations that didn't exist was less frightening than living within this truth. He wondered if Mr. Rainey's nose burnt too, from the smell of cleaner and sterilizers. Perhaps he gazed at this lonely tree, too, during his final days. Adam closed his eyes and conjured up the image of this majestic sight, unseen. He tried hard to imagine what it was that he was searching for all those years, but all that he managed to produce was a golden horizon in his mind. A golden horizon perpetually blocked by tall buildings. Very tall buildings that scrape the skies they have always managed to obscure, from the people who needed to see it the most.